Julius willingly took on the responsibility of being the father of a set of sextuplets who had been rejected by many. After a decade, the truth about these girls emerged in a way no one could have predicted. As he drove back home, Julius glanced in the rearview mirror. 4 of the girls sat quietly in the truck bed, while the other 2 were beside him in the front seat. The atmosphere was somber, almost like a funeral procession, not the joyful drive one might expect on the way to a new home. None of the girls looked happy. Their expressions were flat and indifferent, the look of people who'd learned not to get their hopes up. Julius had just finalized the adoption paperwork at the orphanage and officially become the girl's father. In his mind, there was no adoptive about it. He was their father, plain and simple. Julius wasn't one to do things halfway. He was committed to these girls as his own and had no intention of ever wavering. The sextuplets had spent the past 5 years in the orphanage system. The caretakers told Julius the girls had been orphaned at age 4 and had bounced from one orphanage to another since then. Their story was heartbreaking, and it was what spurred Julius to adopt them, a decision others viewed as impulsive, but that felt absolutely right to him. Now, at age 9, the girls were a rarity, a set of sextuplets, all born on the same day, something Julius found remarkable. They didn't look exactly alike, but they had a unique resemblance, and each of them had a striking beauty even at such a young age. Julius found it strange that they hadn't been adopted sooner, until he learned the full story. The girls had been in multiple orphanages, starting with one where they stayed the longest, about 1.5 years. During that time, they displayed signs of PTSD and required therapy before they began to socialize and play like other children. Once they started opening up, several couples expressed interest in adopting, but none were willing to take all 6. Each family wanted just 1 or 2 of the girls. The orphanage staff understood the challenge. Adopting 6 children was a huge commitment. They hoped that finding families to adopt 1 or 2 girls each might ultimately give all the girls a chance for adoption. However, the girls refused to be split up. They would cry, refuse food, and cause a scene each time one of them was selected for adoption. This happened repeatedly, and it led to frustration for the caretakers. The orphanage then tried a new approach, suggesting trial periods where couples could see if they could handle all 6 girls together. The first family tried, but after a few weeks, issues arose. The wife felt that the girls were taking too much of her husband's attention, and they were returned to the orphanage. Eventually, the orphanage transferred them to another facility in hopes of a fresh start. At the second orphanage, the girls were sent to live with a new couple. Things went well at first, but the wife soon became pregnant after years of trying. By the 2nd month of her pregnancy, she fell ill, and her husband blamed the girls, accusing them of bringing harm to his wife and unborn child. He claimed they were witches, plotting to keep themselves as the only children in the family. With such accusations, the girls were quickly sent back to the orphanage and then transferred to a 3rd one. At the 3rd orphanage, another couple took the girls in. This time, the couple was religious and well-respected in their community. Everything seemed fine until the couple misplaced some valuable jewelry and money they were holding for others. Rather than taking responsibility, they accused the girls of stealing and severely punished them. By this time, the girls, only 7.5, decided to take matters into their own hands. They ran to the police, who intervened. An investigation uncovered much more. The wife had been having an affair, and the husband was involved in gambling. Overnight, their pristine reputation was shattered, and people unfairly blamed the sextuplets, growing more resentful of the girls. As a result, the girls were moved to an out-of-state orphanage, their 4th one. After a few months, that orphanage shut down, and they were transferred to a 5th. The pattern of issues continued until they ended up in the 9th orphanage, where Julius eventually found them. By then, everyone had grown weary of the girls and was eager to move them along. The director of the orphanage told the girls they still had a chance at adoption but would have to be separated. Fear filled their eyes as they looked at each other, heartbroken. They had tried everything to stay together, but it seemed futile. It was at this low point that Julius walked into their lives. Julius was a florist, hired by the orphanage director to beautify the grounds for an upcoming visit from major sponsors. He overheard the director explaining to the girls that they'd reached the end of the line and would be separated. The sight of the girls' reaction haunted Julius, stirring a deep compassion within him. Knocking on the director's door, he offered his home to all 6 girls, assuring the director that he had enough space for them. Julius, a black man, didn't let the racial differences between him and the white girls deter him. He was wholeheartedly ready to take on the responsibility. The orphanage staff, though shocked, were relieved when Julius confirmed his intention to take the girls in permanently. To ensure he was eligible, they conducted a brief assessment. Julius was a widower who lived with his mother, Mildred, in her 50s. Together, they had a stable income sufficient to support the girls. Although the orphanage offered a monthly allowance to help cover the costs, Julius refused. He explained he wasn't offering them a temporary shelter. He was offering them a permanent home as their father. Many thought he was out of his mind, wondering if he understood how disliked the girls were. Despite the skepticism, they allowed him to proceed with the adoption, and within weeks, it was official. Julius was now their father. At Julius's home, his mother, Mildred, was overjoyed to welcome the girls. She had always loved children, and after hearing their story from Julius, she deeply sympathized with them. She saw these girls who had endured so much pain at such a young age as her long-lost grandchildren who had finally come home, and she was committed to helping them feel safe and loved. Mildred had another reason to be happy about the girls joining the family. Ever since Julius's wife had passed away during childbirth 5 years earlier, he'd been alone. He hadn't dated or tried to rebuild his family. Instead, he lived with Mildred in their 5-bedroom home on the edge of the city, growing flowers for his business and tending to a small garden. She hoped the girls' presence would bring new light and life into his world. From the day the girls arrived, Julius made sure all their basic needs were met, and Mildred took note of any additional needs they had, always eager to make them feel at home. But for weeks, the girls stayed distant and formal, saying thank you when expected and speaking only when spoken to. They were cautious. Their past experiences with seemingly kind people had too often turned sour. Julius and Mildred didn't like how stiff and guarded the girls were, but they didn't press them. They treated the girls warmly, offered gentle guidance when needed, and asked questions about their interests. Though the girls' replies were brief and reserved, Julius and Mildred never gave up, patiently hoping they'd eventually feel safe enough to open up. One day, that patience paid off. One of the girls, Dew, was dusting the living room when she accidentally knocked over a family heirloom that Mildred cherished. Panicking, Dew froze, terrified that she'd be punished or even sent away because of the accident. But when Mildred came in, instead of getting angry, she rushed to Dew's side. "Are you hurt? Did you get any cuts? Do you need to see a doctor?" Mildred asked, her voice filled with worry as she checked Dew for injuries. Dew was stunned by Mildred's response and her genuine concern. Overcome with emotion, she burst into tears, and Mildred wrapped her in a comforting hug. That moment marked a turning point. The girls began to see that Julius and Mildred truly cared about them. Slowly but surely, they began to trust them, and over the following months, they started to feel like a real family. Some of the girls took to helping Mildred with household chores and cooking, while others joined Julius in his garden, learning about flowers and gardening. As they helped care for the flowers, Julius expanded the garden, and the girls genuinely enjoyed the work, bringing energy and joy to each task. Seeing this warmed Julius and Mildred's hearts. One day, Mildred organized a bake sale for fun, enlisting the girls to help. They baked a variety of treats that sold out quickly, with customers asking for more. The success of the bake sale led Mildred and the girls to consider starting a small baking business. Meanwhile, Julius received more orders for flowers, which he was able to fulfill thanks to the girls' help. His business grew, and with the additional income, he often surprised the girls with thoughtful gifts. 2 years after the girls moved in, Julius asked if they wanted to do something special. They all agreed on a camping trip. Julius rented a van and planned a one-night camping trip, keeping it short in case they didn't enjoy it and wanted to return home. But the trip held a surprising revelation. Around the campfire, the girls began to sing a song together, each voice blending in perfect harmony with the others. Julius and Mildred were astonished. They had no idea the girls had such a remarkable talent. After the camping trip, Mildred went to her church choir leader and eagerly asked if she'd train the girls in singing. The choir leader only needed to hear the sextuplets once to agree wholeheartedly. The girls, thrilled to have a real mentor, began training 4 times a week. Singing had always been their shared joy, though they'd been too shy to perform openly in front of Julius and Mildred until now. Under their mentor's guidance, the girls practiced tirelessly for a year before starting to sing at local events and festivals. Their performances became a source of pride for Julius and Mildred, and the girls continued to grow in skill and confidence, mastering a variety of styles. Years later, when the girls turned 19, an opportunity arose to enter a major talent competition. Having recently graduated high school, 3 planned to go to college, while the other 3 had different ambitions in business and other fields. The competition's prize money was substantial, enough to support each of their dreams. They decided to go for it, knowing it might be the last time they'd perform together for a while. They chose an a cappella arrangement, pouring everything into perfecting it. On competition day, their performance was a knockout. The judges and audience alike gave a standing ovation, and video clips of the performance quickly went viral. The girls won, and soon they were social media sensations with a major record label offering them a lucrative contract. The sisters promised to consider it. Just a few days later, while they were still weighing the offer, a sophisticated, elegant woman appeared at their doorstep. Julius assumed she was another representative making an offer for the girls, as they'd already received various offers for modeling and endorsements. But the woman explained she wasn't there for business. She was there to see the girls. Though Julius was hesitant, he saw kindness and sorrow in her eyes and agreed. Seated together in the living room, the woman introduced herself as Ariel, the girl's biological mother. Everyone gasped. Ariel shared her heartbreaking story. Her poor, uneducated parents had married her off to an older man in exchange for money. When she became pregnant, he was thrilled, hoping for an heir. But when complications arose from her carrying multiple babies, his enthusiasm turned to anger over the mounting medical bills. The girls were delivered by C-section a few weeks early, and the hospital had celebrated their birth by waiving some fees. But Ariel's husband was furious that all 6 were girls, and doctors advised against another pregnancy for her health. Resentment set in, and he became increasingly abusive. When the girls were 4, Ariel feared for their safety and brought them to an orphanage, pretending they were orphans to keep them safe. She promised them she'd return. For years, Ariel worked tirelessly at menial jobs. Eventually, a kind elderly woman left her a small bed and breakfast, which Ariel turned into a luxury resort. When she was finally able to search for her children, they were no longer at the orphanage. It was only through their viral video that she found them. As the family reconnected, Ariel explained that their father had since passed away, having tragically fallen while intoxicated. The girls were deeply moved by their mother's hardships and embraced her as she shared how grateful she was to Julius and Mildred for their kindness. Ariel invited everyone to her resort for a month-long vacation, including Julius and Mildred. Now 38, Ariel hadn't remarried and was single, as was Julius at 43. During their time at the resort, an undeniable attraction developed between Ariel and Julius. The girls couldn't help but notice and playfully encourage the match. Before long, Ariel and Julius began dating, and just a few months later, Julius proposed. Ariel happily accepted, and they were soon married. Ariel moved into the home filled with love, her new husband, 6 beautiful daughters, and a supportive mother-in-law. What a journey! It's inspiring to see how people can overcome life's challenges and ultimately find happiness. If this story touched you, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay tuned for more uplifting stories. See you in the next video.